Hello and welcome to Teaching Mathematics. Today we're joined by Lee. Welcome back, Lee.
Hi, nice to be back.
It's good to have you back. And we've got Karen behind the buttons. Welcome, Karen.
Hello.
Okay, so today we're talking about grade 12 prelims and how to review them. It's a bit of a strange topic.
Yes and no. I think it's something that perhaps we don't really get into until we later on in our teaching careers. First year or two, you don't think about it.
Yes.
But after that, you realize how important it is to do that.
Yes, I think in the first year or two, you view it just as a measure of how much they understand or how much they've worked, and you don't see the true meaning behind the marks.
Yeah, and how much you can help things along by taking note of what you're finding.
Yes, all very true. And I'm really excited. Obviously, we've done some prep before, so I know what's coming. Everyone else out there doesn't or don't yet. I don't know. Doesn't or don't?
Don't, I think.
Okay. Everyone
does not.
Okay. Does not know yet what's happening. Remember, you can talk to us using Twitter. The hashtag is MEMATS, or you can find us on Facebook. It's the Digital Classroom South Africa Facebook page. And post a comment on the post that's there. You'll see it's got the image from today's show there. So just post below that. Kieran will be watching both Twitter and Facebook. And he will be watching the chat box, which is just underneath this video player. So if you scroll down just a little, you'll see that there's a place that you can type in a nickname and log in. And you'll find Kieran there and say hello to him.
And Kieran can multitask, clearly.
Yes, he's one of the few who can. So say hello to him, and you could possibly win 110 Rand Vodacom airtime. So it's worth saying hello, isn't it?
It's very worth it. No, I wouldn't say no to 110 airtime.
Not at all.
I know.
No, that can keep you going for quite a while, actually.
It depends.
And remember, you can also win a phone or a tablet by submitting your favorite teaching resource to us. It could be something worksheet that you've used previously. It could even be an audio recording of something that you've used in class. Tell us how you've used the teaching resource, and then you're in line to win a phone or a tablet. So that's exciting. Oh, that's what I'm leaving out. You need to send it to competitions@digitalclassroom.co.za. So send those teaching resources to us. I will be the one who replies to you and say, hey, welcome. It's good to get your teaching resource. So pop in and say hello to me.
And what's nice about that is even if you don't use it as it is, it gives you an idea that you can springboard off.
Yes, exactly.
Very nice.
Now, before we get on to anything, why don't you tell us again a little bit about yourself?
Yes, again. I work for a group of schools, of 10 schools, and my job is to drive the vision of the maths in those schools. So it ranges from grade R through to grade 12. At the moment, I'm actually stationed in one of the high schools. They move me around, and I'm working intensively over the one campus where there are 2 schools. Actually.
Okay.
So it's great fun. You get to work with teachers, you get to see the classroom, what's happening, and drive change, which is really exciting.
That is exciting.
It's very good, yeah.
Yes, so
Great
you get
job.
to see what's actually happening and then help those who are having struggles, whether they be teachers or students. And
That's right. It's actually great. It's a very rewarding thing to be in.
now, I know you do a lot of benchmarking tests as well.
Oh, yes.
So you know a lot about assessment, and you have actually been here before talking about assessment.
It's quite a passion with me.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to, well, I've said that already, looking forward to this. So let's just get on to Teach Like a Champion. As you know, I've been reading this for quite a while.
I'm very impressed that you're so persistent in getting through this book.
Well, I'm also halfway through War and Peace and
my
Lord of the
gosh.
Rings, so, you know.
And I believe War and Peace is quite a read.
It is. It's good, though. So today's thing, or technique, is technique number 20, and Karen's going to pull up the slide for us, and it's called Exit Ticket. And the quote I've taken from the book is, end your lesson with a final at-bat, a single question or maybe a short sequence of problems to solve at the close of the class. Now, last week we spoke about the at-bat, and the at-bat was a comparison of doing baseball exercises, facing a whole lot of balls to get your hitting correct. And so they're saying that you should do a whole lot of problems in varying difficulty and varying ways of tackling it to get practice. It's not just enough to get the question right once. You have to get a variety of questions right.
I can well believe that. The students don't believe that, but we can.
Yes, we can. And we've spoken before about likening it to cricket and bowling. You can't bowl a perfect ball the first time. You need to carry on going over and over and over to get faster and more accurate.
I was telling that to a boy just the other day, and I said to him, it's like golf. He said to me, golf's more fun. So I sort of put paid to it.
But where this exit ticket is different is that it's saying as just before the students leave your class, or the learners leave your class, they should do one activity that gives you as the teacher some kind of feedback as to their understanding or their mastery or just the general success of the lesson. And then it should provide you with some kind of data that you can go back and you can go, okay, well, this is understood, but that isn't. So it almost implies that it has to be a written response. I
was thinking that. I suppose you could do it verbally to an extent, but it would probably be more effective written.
Yes, which sounds like marking to me.
That's not a bad thing.
Well, no, it's not
job
bad.
Satisfaction.
But when you're teaching 8 classes
I know.
in a day and you must do this 8 times, it feels like a lot of work. This is where I think technology can help us.
Fabulous idea.
So there's simple apps and things like that you can use, and you don't even have to have apps. You can do. There's a great website called polleverywhere.co.za.
Let's try that.
And basically, people can submit responses by SMS or using a web code if you've got Wi-Fi in your school or something like that, and they can just answer a question, and you as the teacher can see, well, 3 people answered it this way, 4 people answered it that way, and 5 people answered it like
you also get these little machines I've seen that you lock in the answer, but they're quite dear, I think.
Yes.
Certainly I don't possess any of those.
No. This at least works with the technology that they hopefully have in their pocket, which is a cell phone. Yeah. SMSs can be expensive, but I don't know, it's easier than marking, so I kind of go, well, if it were me, I would say, come, this will be fun. Don't worry about the cost. It'll be fine. Yeah, which is maybe a bit inconsiderate of me.
No, I'm sure they use the SMSs much, much better for the other things, so one for maths would not kill them.
Yes, I think so. Okay, we're going to start with your 5-point teaching strategy.
Yes, I will unpack these later on. But just to summarize them, I've given the 5 points. Do you want to go through them, Helen?
Yes, I do. The first point, and Karen's going to pull them up now. The first point says, make sure that you record common errors on the memo or exam paper as you mark.
Now, with me doing benchmarking, I find that I mark different schools. So I will do, say, one of the schools, and I'll take that paper or that memo and write comments for that school. So I'm very specific. And then the next piece of paper I would use for the other school so that I can give very detailed feedback to the school.
Now, would you write a comment after one person had got it wrong?
No, I would usually look for a trend. So I would, once I sort of see the thing coming up 3 or 4 times, then I start thinking, okay, and then I usually make a note of it and hang on, and then usually it comes up another 10 or 20 times.
Okay.
So you end up with it more often because it seems to be a misconception that is general to that particular group. And it's interesting doing it. I actually find very different misconceptions in the different schools. So it is particular to a particular school or class.
That is interesting. The second point says capture your marks per question.
Now, that's a big one for me, and I think once before I have shown one of those things, but I have got another one just now. But what I do is I capture all the individual questions, and I work out the percentages for every individual question, and then I'll talk through how I actually decide whether there's a problem area or not a problem area on the particular question.
Do you capture the marks per learner?
Yes, per learner. What's nice is you also enable to track them. So what I do is I capture per question, but then I also capture per section. So I'll put a spreadsheet together and say question 1, 4, and 7 are the same section. I'll put them together in a spreadsheet, and then I can actually see, say, algebra is weak or whatever. I'll make it like that. So then it also tracks over several years. I mean, obviously takes a lot of work, so it makes it a bit hard.
Yes, it sounds like a lot of work.
That side makes it a bit work, but you'll see when we go through the prelim paper how I made it more accessible for everybody.
Yes, and when we do go through it, I'd like to share a personal story that I've had with this kind of approach. And I'd like to talk about it in more detail.
Oh,
I know
that's great.
there's probably going to be people who, at this point going,
Let me out of here quick.
Yes, click close.
Hang on, it'll be worth it.
Yes, it is worth it. Stick with us.
Right. Obviously, Rome wasn't built in a day, so if you've never done it before, take it slowly.
Yes.
Just slowly develop it.
Yes.
You don't have to get everything done in one shot, but you can go back to this resource and see maybe you can use one or two aspects of it to start.
I think so. Point 3. Look at your average for the question in terms of what cognitive level the question was set on.
Now, this was caused by us going to a conference, and I heard one of the examiners talking about how he sets the paper, and then if he sets a routine question, he expects a certain level of performance in the question. And I thought that's a brilliant way to actually know if your children are coping or not, is if you look at the cognitive level required in the question, and then you say, well, look, obviously that's an easy question. I expect 70% of my students to get that right.
Yes.
Whereas it's a really difficult question, well, maybe 30% can get it right. And I will unpack that a bit more when we've got a spreadsheet in front of us and everything else.
Yeah. Your 4th point says, plan what sections need tightening up on and what requires reteach or a workshop.
This is a very interesting time at this stage of the year. I know that the school I'm in at the moment, the matrics have just finished their prelim, and the teachers are all raring to now tie them up and get things organised and sort out things. And of course, they're in silly season. They want to now get to the end of school.
They know their marks are in.
Yes.
The die has been cast.
Yeah, I'm afraid that is the interesting things that does happen. But what we need to do is you need to look at it and decide if it's just like a notation issue, something quick and easy to, while going through the paper with them, to mention, versus something where you actually pick up some issue that hasn't been clearly understood, and you need to either reteach it or workshop it.
Yeah.
And then you must impress the children. My suggestion is you scare them. You say to them, do you know that this section is worth 40% of your paper too? It's amazing how motivated they get when they hear that.
Yes.
So if you direct them that way to realize how important, because obviously you're not going to workshop a huge section if it's worth three marks.
Yes.
So obviously it's all relative to what was asked and what you've picked up.
Yeah. We're going to talk about this more
Definitely,
later.
we're going to unpack it a little bit
and
later.
I do have some other ideas as well to add to
good.
that. Your 5th point, which is right down at the bottom, says build renewed confidence in the learners. And this is probably the most important.
Yeah, I quite agree with you. It is the most important thing. Because if they've been demolished by a paper, to get them to stand up again and go back fighting is very, very difficult. So you've got to tap into what is positive, at the same time move them along and show them how they can improve on that, even if it's minimally, but they can improve. And it's that delicate thing between their egos and facing this whole situation again, because now the real thing's happening. So they've had this bad experience with these external prelim papers, and now they've got to face the external, and they know that there's probably some kind of similarity there, and so you've got to build that whole feeling of I can do it, and yes, I had a bad day, and all these things that would help them to re-engage.
Yes.
And I spend a lot of time doing that. That's one of the most important things.
I do think so. Of course, having a confident person who knows nothing is pretty useless in an exam, but having someone who's so freaked out that they can't write anything down is also pretty useless.
And that's very important, is to get them to realize if they put nothing on the paper, then no marks will be there either. And so even a little bit is better than nothing. And it's just getting them past that hurdle of who cares if you've written something and you think it's rubbish. You might get a mark, and if you don't write anything, well, you're definitely getting 0.
Yes.
So it's that whole prompting them.
You can't win it if you're not in it.
No, you can't. You can't.
Say that every Saturday. It's a lotto. 3 pressure points. The first one is concern over shortage of time to remediate. Yeah. And this is a big concern.
And it is, because, as I said, the matrics are on another planet at this stage.
Yes.
And
it's coming to
sight and
school holidays.
Yeah.
And
in fact, there will be I know certainly in the schools I've taught at, just before they go off, they get silly. And then finally when they go off, they suddenly realize, oops, we've got to work now. And that is maybe a good time to grab them.
Yes.
So once they've gone, just watch the exam timetable, make sure you don't put your workshop near anything that's too important or needs lots of studying, like history, etc.,
Sunny,
etc.
how do you determine what's more important?
Well, look, I think it depends what sort of subject they're writing.
Okay.
Now, some subjects are high intensive learning subjects, like your life sciences and your history, geography. So certainly don't aim for those ones. I mean, obviously, if you're writing an English essay, it won't require massive learning before. Yes, they do need to center themselves and think about their plans and that sort of thing. But literature, English literature, might be huge work. So it's like looking at that timetable and judging it. What's ideal usually is if they've written on a Friday and then they're only writing the next week, Monday, that Friday afternoon would be a great time to get them. They're all there for having written English or whatever it might be. And if you have that workshop then and there, like give them an hour's break to just find themselves, pull them in and do the workshop, they've still got their 2 days to worry about whatever's happening on Monday.
Yes.
So it just helps them to center.
You know, giving the workshops fancy names also helps. So
It
it's
does.
not just a workshop, it's like boot camp or...
That is actually a very good idea.
whatever, what's that? CrossFit. Matt's CrossFit. Or whatever.
CrossFit. Gosh, if it's scare me senseless, you can see how well I do on that one.
But it gets the general idea. We're here to work our brains. Don't do much exercising myself. Okay, next point.
That's not my strong point. That's where I need to go and do some boot camp.
The second point says how to ensure an improvement.
Yeah, because you don't want to bring the children back, do things with them, and actually not see the benefits of it. So you almost have to coax them.
Yes.
And then you have to offer them something that they can see the evidence of this having helped. So perhaps your idea of that quote you gave earlier on, like teach from a champion, like say you were doing a workshop on trigonometry, for example. You could set 1 or 2 questions at the end of the workshop and even swap around and mark and then comment.
Yes.
And say, right, look what you got, look how much better, that sort of thing.
It helps to see, bless you, it helps for them to get that immediate feedback and to see that they have done better.
And maybe you could set a multiple choice even, just so that they can see
Yes.
instant gratification. Oh, but hang on, I couldn't do that, now I can.
Yes.
And that psychological feeling is what they need.
Yes.
And amazing how success breeds success. It just does.
It really does. And the third point says demotivated students opt out.
I
So
know,
they
that is the big fear, and that's what we mentioned about you've got to build that ego, you've got to make them feel reassured, and you've got to convince them that, like you can use any method. I mean, one of the things I have been known to do to say to students is, okay, so you got 10% for your prelim, but if you really try and you get 27, maybe you get lucky and the paper's a really hard paper and they have to shift the marks up.
Yes.
And you can make it, and it's amazing how if they see some hope, they don't opt out. Otherwise, you'll get a child coming in, they'll put their heads down and say, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this, and not even hand in anything. I know in matric marking centres, I've seen scripts come in with nothing written. Or alternatively, my teacher never taught me this all the way through the paper, but everybody else in the class and the school knows it. But that one wasn't taught that. So, you've got to try and avoid them doing that and talking to them about the ranking, the fact that your ranking is important.
Yeah.
And how they slide marks. I mean, all these things that we know happen as teachers can make a big difference if they know there's a hope that if they try their very best, they can still make it.
Yes. So it's all about restoring that hope.
Yeah, you have to.
Restoring that confidence.
Because otherwise they do opt out.
Yes, they do. Now, you have taken some questions from the recent Gauteng Department of Education prelim.
Right, the prelim paper.
So all of these are from paper 1?
Correct. I was going to do paper 2 as well, but I thought we'd probably have too much information as usual. So I thought I would concentrate on one of the papers. And I chose questions to discuss where I thought I would know what a child would do wrong here.
Okay.
So that was my thinking behind it. So this question here, this question 2.1, you'll see that it says k equals the root of x plus 1 all squared minus 4, where k is a real number. Okay. So the kind of comment I would be writing as I'm marking is I'd notice a lot of the children are saying, well, it can be x squared plus 2x plus 1 minus 4, so therefore it's x squared plus 2x minus 3, and
so
then they've got a thing that, they're multiplying it out. So I know that that's not incorrect. I mean, they can do that, but they're making work for themselves, and we will discuss that more just now.
So you write these comments on the actual paper.
Yeah. So whatever they were doing that was silly, like, for example, they forgot the square root sign. They just worked with the inside and left the root sign on. That would be one of the comments I'd write there.
Yes.
Because then I could say to them when we go through the paper, be aware that that's the kind of mistake you made. And, to be, as I said to them, if you're making mistakes, if you make yourself aware of the kind of mistakes you're making, it's like a double check to yourself.
Yes.
So you're one of the people who forgets to write a square root sign. Then every time you look at a square root sign, you're thinking, I must remember to write that square root sign now, because you're aware that that is an issue for you. So something like that. And then, of course, that's 2.1.2. I would guarantee that probably minimally children answered that.
Okay, and the question says write down the minimum value of K.
Of K.
And your comment is no idea where to start.
And I see that they're like looking at this and there's an odd random answer, but really nothing of any sense or proportion. So that would be for me, that would be a flag question for me.
Okay.
And you'll see when I've actually got like some marks there, I've obviously put what I thought the children would get for it. Obviously you would know, the teacher would know more because they've marked that paper, so they know how their children did. And then, that for me is like huge problems. They're making things more difficult for themselves by multiplying it, and then they can't engage with the second part of the question. All right, it was only worth 1 mark.
Yes.
But it's not a hard 1 mark, actually, if you know what to do.
Okay.
So, that's what I'd also weigh up. If it's like 10 marks, well, then you better get it certainly off the ground. 1 mark, okay, so they lost 1 mark. But if it's an easy 1 mark to get, rather don't let them lose it.
Yes.
So that's what I think.
So many things to weigh up.
It's a balancing act. Instead of America's Got Talented, South African maths teachers have talent.
Yes. But I think as you teach more, you get used to seeing the same problems over and over again.
And this question I chose because
so this is question 9 from also paper 1.
Also from paper 1. I can guarantee you every teacher who's reading this right now is saying to themselves, oh, of course, that's what they always do. They sometimes just use the derivative law without using first principles, even though the question clearly says differentiate from first principles.
Yes.
They forget the limit. That's a very common mistake. Sorry. And then they forget to distribute the -3 into the x plus h all squared. That's another very common mistake.
Yes, it is.
I know, sadly, but it is one of the things. But these are little things that, again, awareness can improve performance.
And so by writing these down, when you're doing the feedback, you can say, well, a lot of you did this, a lot of you did that, and then they can go through and they can see, actually, I fall into this category. I'm guilty of this one,
and I need to remember the following. Yeah.
Yes.
And those are easy ones to fix up. All of those are ones that you have to impress. First principles, highlight it. Means you can't use your rule, so that they're aware of it.
What this kind of comment provides is a tool for reflection for them. They don't just go, okay, well, I got 3 out of 10 for that question, and then move on.
That's right. And then they don't see what they've actually done that resulted in the 3 out of 10.
Yes.
What is quite a good idea, too, if you have the time, is to actually put the question and then write down the issues for that question and give them a handout. Because then they can, in their own leisure, revisit that. But I wouldn't give them the handout till I'd gone through the paper with them, and then give them the handout so they can take it home and reflect.
Okay.
I'm not sure about, I think the government doesn't have portfolios you hand in anymore, do you?
Oh, I don't know offhand. I'm sorry.
Also not sure. I know that the IB does. But if you don't, then they've got their papers, they can work with them and things. But most people will have a certain amount of time with their paper anyhow, even if they are putting it into a portfolio.
Yes.
So that's great. I didn't write any comments on the one with the tangent, but there again, probably what they would have done, I would guess, just knowing children as I do for many years of teaching them, they probably have then redifferentiated it using a rule because they've now done the first principle and not realized it's actually helped them. And then they've probably substituted in the -2 and got the gradient and then been a bit lost as to what to do with it. They've forgotten it's got to be the equation of the tangent.
Yes.
So then you choose a straight line, y equals mx plus c. So that's the kind of thing you could have happen. And then 921, of course, every teacher's saying, of course, they do not multiply it out. They just differentiate it as it stands.
Yes.
Or they multiply it incorrectly because it's all those horrible fractions in that. And again,
it all comes back to fractions.
I've always said to them that if I wanted to get rich, I'd make a bank that works in fractions and I'd be a millionaire in no time. Because you can fox most people using fractions.
Yes.
And so that would be something easy to fix, to remind them, and especially if you're reminding them just before they write, they'll focus more on it. And, of course, now it's big stakes because now the play rehearsal at school is over and it's now the actual performance. So they're more aware of these things and they take it more seriously at this stage. And then the last one there, they do not factorize the numerator. They just differentiate it as it stands, or the notation is poor.
Yes.
And that's something you need to, and that's something you can actually remind them on, and you can fix up very easily with them.
Okay.
So you can get them to look at that in great detail.
Okay. I don't think anyone out there will be able to see what the exponents are, unfortunately.
Okay. But they can refer to their question papers.
Yes.
It's question 9.2 and 9.1. But it's a pity you can't see that because it's actually p cubed plus 1, so it's the difference of sum of cubes. Oops.
Yes.
And that they find very difficult for some reason.
It is peculiar. They have been doing it since grade 10.
That's right.
And it should be a straight application. If they didn't understand what they were doing, they could just do a straight application of this.
And it's not a hard one either. It's a relatively easy one. It's not like it's p cubed plus 8 and then you've got to worry about whether it's a 2p or a 4p in the middle. Okay. So it should, mind you, I suppose it could get them still because they've got to worry about p or 2p. So I suppose it could be difficult. But again, it's a good time to
2p
actually
or
shape
not 2p?
And who thought Shakespeare had anything to do with that? At least we've got a sense of humour about it on the right side. Now, you can see what I've done here. Now, I haven't got the paper in front of me, but if you look at your paper, you will be able to see what I've done there. I've been very careful how I've divided it up. So question 1 was like a kind of solve for X thing. Yes. And it was really what I consider routine stuff you've done in class, you've practiced. The children have seen several of them. So that's how I've got a big R on top of it to remind me. 2.1, which you have just seen, is that one with the root of.
Yes.
And there I have called it complex. Now, 2.2, I think I was smoking my socks because that would be almost problem solving, but it could also be seen as routine if you've seen it before.
Yes.
That's the criteria, really. If you've seen and practiced something, it's routine.
Yes.
If it's complex, it requires maybe applying more than one section of mathematics together. And that's why I'm calling 2.1 complex, because it's got a square root sign and it's got something that looks like a parabola inside it.
Yes.
So that's like melding sections. So it's a little bit more demanding. And then 3, I said was routine. 4, I said was complex. 5, I said routine. 6, routine. 7, routine. And then you can see in 8, I've made 8.1 to 8.3 routine, and I've captured them together.
Okay.
And 8.4, I've decided was complex. And then 11, I couldn't divide it up properly, so I've split it between routine and complex. I've got a mixed feeling about it.
Okay.
And I've spread it out like that. So you would do that with your paper when you got it.
Okay.
So you'd look and you'd do that. And then you would look at the average your children got. So I manufactured some averages there. So if I look at the first one, that 12.
Yes.
12 out of 14 means the children got an average of 86%. It was a routine question. That's good. I'm happy if 86% of my children can do something routine.
So you wouldn't run a workshop or a boot camp on
I might mention, say they forgot a invalid or something like that. I might mention that, but it would not be a high level engage with the situation.
Yes.
2.1 is that one where you square both sides and solve for X and that, and you can see the average is not looking healthy.
No, 33%.
That's a huge flag for me.
Yes.
It's complex, but in a complex, and you'll see just now, I'll give you this division. It depends what sort of group you've got. You know your students. I mean, if you've got children that are not doing so well, obviously you set your benchmark a bit differently. But assuming I've got a normal group of children, with some weak, some strong, some in the middle,
yes,
I think 50% on complex would be a fair request. Now, it's 33, and that worries me intensely.
Okay.
So that would be definitely one I would do some remediation or some kind of workshop or something to help him, because there's something not right about it. 2.2, sitting at 75, very happy with that. It's a routine according to this. Question 3, it's 81. I'm very, very happy.
So basically you would go through and then I see that you've highlighted them with
yes, I have
colors.
highlighted that light bluish one over there, whatever it is.
65.
65 is quite good, actually, for a complex. to sit at 65. That means they've got that under control.
Okay.
So
And
then you
we're
see
back
another
down to
33, which is
for
scary.
8.4.
I know every teacher's heart sinks when they see that.
Oh, and that 15 for
The 15 is
question
shocking
12.
for that complex. So then I know that needs serious help. If you look to that 50 there, it's a routine, but 50 is not great for something we've practiced in class and done worksheets on. So I would be a little concerned with it. And in fact, that question, I think, no, it's number 10. I thought it was number 9. But if it was that, I would look and just see what type of errors they were making, because I would have made notes on my memo. I wouldn't be very happy with a 50. I would think it's
You know what's
not good.
nice about this is obviously you enter in your names down the
That's
side
right,
over
yeah.
here, and then you enter in your marks. So you can actually mark quite nicely section to section.
Yes, you can.
And then at the end, your spreadsheet can add up all your marks for
Correct.
you. You don't have
no
to
need
sit
to do
there
it yourself.
and add it up 3 times and get 3 different answers. It's all there. And what I've used a spreadsheet like this for before, and obviously not in grade 12 for the prelims, but for, let's say, grade 10, middle of the year, is writing comments.
It's very useful for that,
So-
because you can see exactly where your weaknesses are for every child.
Yes, and if you can see, okay, well, the question 12 was, let's say, trigonometry, and you know that it happened at the end of first term where Johnny was not focusing, you could say, Johnny's mark in the trigonometry section is poor because Johnny had a personal issue and blah, blah, blah.
I think you've raised a very important thing. I don't believe it's good to wait to prelims to do this. I think it should be earlier. And I agree with you. June exams are superb time, because it's a simple exam. It doesn't really serve a purpose because they're going to the next year. Right, it's interesting for comments, but it doesn't give you an opportunity to remediate on the other grades.
Yes.
But the June exam would be useful, because you'd be able to say, okay, this is where I need to pick up with this class and fix it up before the end of the year.
And if you teach the same class next year, you can actually monitor their progress.
Well, that's
Let's say
great for the
Johnny
December one
never
as well.
gets good at trigonometry.
He clearly
You'd be
has
able
not
to see
listened
it.
to his trigonometry lessons
Yes.
or whatever.
Yes, mental block or something.
Yeah.
At least when the parent is sitting opposite you and saying, why is Johnny not doing well, you can say,
Correct.
well, if I look at the marks, it's trigonometry that's letting him down.
I think that is so useful. And even if you now took an extra few lines of the spreadsheet and you put all the routine questions under one, complex
Yes.
under another, problem solving under another, and then you could actually say your child's coping very, very well with the routine kind of questions
Yes.
that we've practiced in class. But as soon as we start mixing the sections, then we have a problem. And for problem
That's
solving, he cannot
fantastic.
engage at all because he doesn't know where to get started, or she doesn't know where to get started. So that would help the parents a lot too, because then they know what. It's no good them going practicing 50 like that in class, because that's all right.
Yeah.
They need to look at the mixed examples.
I do hear some of my friends in my head saying, okay, they're real people. I can just hear their voices saying, but I don't have time for this. And what's more, the parents don't actually care. And I would disagree with them, because
also
I've
disagree
worked
with you.
in various high schools with various types of parents, working parents, stay-at-home moms, all sorts of things like that. If you are able to provide that kind of feedback to them, whether they ask for it or not, suddenly they become very interested in what's actually happening.
Because otherwise they're just looking at a mark, and a mark can be anything.
Yes. So giving them that power to help their child.
I
is
agree with you. I
fantastic.
think there is, and even if they don't, even if the child benefits from it, all the better.
Yes.
I mean, that comment or whatever you're writing for that child, the child will read and the parent will read. So even if the parent thinks, I couldn't care less, that he couldn't do his trick, the child will say, well, look, I know there's one section I need to
Yes.
work on. And if there's some kind of remediation at school, he can go and get some help.
Yes.
So he knows where to go.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. I think it's very important. But it is work. I've got to be honest
No,
about that.
it does take more time, but I do think it builds better relationships with your students, with your
Definitely.
parents, and provides you more direction where to go with your boot camp workshops.
Yes, and also it helps you as a teacher too, because you become aware now. Okay, I saw with my class they were always doing this mistake.
Yes.
So when you come to teach the next time, you're aware and you stress it, so it doesn't become a problem with the next class you teach. It's too late for the other one, of course, you've had to remediate, but at least the next encounter with that section, you're wiser as to the kind of mistakes that the children make.
Or going back to the trigonometry example, when you get to trig functions, you then go, oh, but we had an issue with this, so let's just quickly revise because you obviously didn't get it the first time, and now let's apply that knowledge to our functions.
And there's a lot to be said, like say you now know that there's a class that are not so good at trig. Another way to do it is to actually go in and give them a diagnostic test before you start.
Yes. Just define a diagnostic test for everyone.
So what you would do is you would take their previous year's work, set a few questions that basically cover all the issues that you've handled the year before. You'd let them write it, you'd mark it, and you'd see where you need to start before you start teaching.
Yes.
So sometimes you'll think, oh, well, they finished grade 8, they should know this section. Meantime, back at the ranch, they haven't got the faintest clue what you're on about, and you might as well be speaking some strange language. So if you've done that diagnostic, and you then come in with the diagnostic and you say, well, let's go through what you should have learned last year, and you go through the questions, you're actually reteaching where the weaknesses are. So it's a good way to kick off the start.
To make it easier for yourself, what you could do is pre-decide what the weaknesses might be and have a multiple choice answer sheet.
No, there's a lot to be said for that. But important with any assessment is the feedback you give.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what the assessment type was. It's how you use that information to inform your teaching and future practices.
No, I completely agree. Okay, so we've spent quite a bit of time talking about the spreadsheet, and now we have this very long slide which looks slightly intimidating to read.
Yes, it does. It's basically what I've been mentioning. I just said that for me, routine, I would expect 70% average.
Okay.
So I did mention that earlier on, that if it was 70%, I was quite happy with it. And I think obviously if I had a very weak class,
I'm going to read out the first point.
I might make it 60% for routine if I really have a shockingly weak class.
Okay.
But I try not to. I'd rather keep it at 70.
Okay, so the first point of the slide says, if the question was routine, I would expect more than 70% average for the question. So once you've gone through that spreadsheet, you would make sure that each point was...
That's why I was flagging with the colours, the ones that weren't there. And I knew I had to go back to them. And like that 60, I think it was, which was in a routine.
Yes. Oh, that makes sense.
Just be careful. Just be careful.
Okay, and point 2 says, if it is complex, I would expect more than 50% average for the question.
So again, that's where you're marrying two kinds of mathematics together to make one question. And yes, it's more demanding, but if 50% of my students are getting this more demanding question, I'm also happy.
Okay.
You know, there is a division. I'll talk about that when you finish going through the slide.
Oh, okay. The third point says, if it is problem solving, I would expect more than 30% average for the question. So problem solving is like the unseen of mathematics.
Unseen, non-routine kind of questions.
Not necessarily word problems.
Not necessarily. And that's something we do make a mistake on. We assume word problems are problem solving. They're not.
Yes.
Not according to our definition in terms. It's actually better called non-routine.
Yes.
That's a much better name for it. And you can see them happening in lots of papers. In matric, they still try to link it a little bit to work, but they don't have to. There's no need to. I love those myself.
Yes, I get quite excited. I sit there with my pen and oh dear.
It's that one that the teacher gets the paper and thinks, I've got to do this question.
Yes, exactly. The fourth point talks about 3 question numbers.
Yes, those are the ones in the previous slide that I red flagged at 33%.
Okay, so that's 2.1, 8.4, and question 12.
And I'm saying...
Okay. And they're saying is a red flag where the average is 33%, which is far too low, and I would need remediation.
Oh, that's like a huge belting light that's saying help, help, help for me.
Okay. Okay, and the last point says 10 is low for routine question, but probably would only require focusing the learners. So that means question 10 in terms of the spreadsheet.
And that was the one that had 50%. I lie. It was 50% for routine. And I'm saying, routine 50%, but it might just be shaping up the notation, tidying up in some way. It's not chronic, but it's not what I'd like to see.
Yes. Okay, back to questions. So Karen's going to pull this slide up, and it's question 2.1.
Yes, and this is how I would go about sorting out the problems. So this one says k is equal to the root of x plus 1 all squared minus 4, where k is a real number. Now, that might be a flag, because I know what they are with their number systems. I would immediately stress to them, real numbers. What are real numbers?
They exist.
Yeah, well, how do we know they exist? So I would unpack that a little bit with them. So I'd look at the question, and where there was like something that they could misunderstand, I'd really unpack it. And the first question says, solve for x if k equals 4. Leave your answer in simplest third form. Now, remember when I was looking at this question earlier on, and I was writing the comments, I wrote it, they multiplied out.
Yes.
As an observation, because I know how many times I've seen children do that, and I always think, why are you doing that? You're making your life hard. You're increasing the chances of making errors. Don't do it.
Yes.
So what I would do on the board is I would then go and I would do it the way I would have done it, which is the left-hand side one.
Okay. So
Where
putting the cursor
the cursor's
around
there.
there.
So you can see there I'm saying if k is 4, I'd replace the 4. And then I would say, right, I have a square root sign. We know that if there's a square root sign, we need to square both sides.
Okay.
Notice I have not times out the inside of the square root sign.
Yes.
Then I'd say, okay, well, now what do we notice? We notice that minus 4 is a number, and it could go to the other side. And if it does, then it's 16 plus 4, which is 20. So now I've got something all squared equals 20. What do we know? We know that's a difference of squares, so we can go x plus 1 is plus or minus the square root of 20.
Okay.
And look how neat that is. Well, now it's really easy, because all I do is I bring over the 1, and it comes minus 1. And then the root 20, because it said simplest third form, I know root 20 is 4 times 5, which is 2 root 5.
Yes.
So that's easy, done and dusted. And you can see it's taken me 2, 4, 5 lines maybe, max.
Yes.
But now if we go to the right-hand side, and this is what I would see, I can almost guarantee if I marked a matric question like this, they would immediately put in the 4, because that they do know how to do.
Yes.
They would then multiply out that square.
Yes.
They'd collect the like terms. They'd bring the 16 over, and now they've got a hideous trinomial that does not factorize.
Yes.
So, okay, now they finally realize it doesn't factorize, even though the question said in simplest third form. So now they whip out their formula, and off they go substituting in. You can see how much a palaver it is. You get the answers, you simplify the root 80, you divide 3 by 2, and you finally get the answer. But what I would impress on the children is that was worth 4 marks. Can you see that the right-hand side would take you 8 marks worth of time?
Yes.
And that is why we're saying don't do that.
And this is why you need to do lots of practice, because then you can see
Correct.
what you need to do.
So immediately after having discussed this question, I will then follow up with some kind of work to reinforce that, because that's what they need now. So they remember next time they see something all squared minus 4, they're not going to multiply it out. They're going to see first if they can manage without doing that. So that's exactly how I would start that question. And I think it's a good argument. You can see the one takes much more work.
Yes.
Plus, you've got the risk of making a mistake with a number and ending up with a completely wrong answer. Whereas the other way, you can probably not make many mistakes. Maybe one, if you're lucky. Not more than that.
Shall we go to the next
slide?
part?
Yes, please.
Which is 2.2,
And
2.1.1
And this is
continued.
where I now, having done this with them and actually impressed them, that hang on a moment, that's why I'm saying do this method. Because look at the difference it makes to your time. And I stress, as I said, more possibility of errors, more time consuming, and then I give them a few. So that first one there, I've deliberately picked it because it does square root.
Ah.
So I would start with something that really doesn't give them a horrible third.
Okay, so you scaffold them into more difficult...
And that's exactly what I'm doing there. You'll see that's exactly what I start. So
Yes.
the first one I give them is something all squared equals 16, and that's easy because we know 16 can square root. So it's x plus 2 equals plus minus 4, and we split it into the 2 solutions and solve it out.
Yes.
And then just to prove the point, I might even multiply it out and factorize it for them, just to show them how much longer it would have taken me if I did the other way. Because it's easy to do that, you can factorize easy.
Yes.
Now you see the very next one, I change it to 12, which now of course is not a perfect square, which means they're going to get the third that I wanted them to have in that previous one they had for the exam. And then the next one I complicated a bit more by bringing the 24 to the left-hand side.
I can hear myself in my head saying, you see how clever I was. All I had to do to make this more difficult was bring it over to the other side, and I've confused you all.
That is exactly what you're doing.
Yes.
And it's actually not a bad idea to tell children that, to say to them, you see how the examiner can make it look more difficult than what it is. So don't panic, take it easy, and you can solve it out. Now notice I haven't used a single square root sign yet.
That's true. Not until...
Because I want to reinforce the concept of solving off that format rather than the squaring. And then that last one there, I just put the zero on the other side to change the scenery. And then number 5, I put the square root sign in.
Yes.
So now they go back to the one they had in the prelim. And maybe I could have given them 2 of those to do just to make sure. But it's a nice little thing. Now they've got the hang of solving that format. Now it's got a square root sign, so what we square and it's back to what it was.
Yeah.
So it's also nice to show them, but hang on, that's no different. So I think that kind of grading of it and getting them to do it and talk about it. A minute to do this one, let's talk about it. Let's do the next one. You've got 2 minutes, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So you're reinforcing all the time the method.
Shall we move on?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, so now we're looking
This
at
looks
question 2.1.2, which is write down the minimum value of K.
Okay.
And this was a 1-mark question.
It was. Now, it looks very, very scary there because what I've done is unpack for them the thinking. And when I looked at this when I was doing it, I thought, this could almost classify into problem solving.
Yes.
But it depends. If I had taught it, which I probably would have done, it wouldn't be problem solving for my children. So it would be very much, that's why I say your routine, your complex, and your problem solving at the top of your spreadsheet is dependent on what you've taught your children. So you would get different ones, say, perhaps to me. So the first thing I would do with them here, and this is where I would use intensity, I'd say to them, first of all, it was 1 mark. In other words, I could do that in 1 step. Maybe 2 at a push.
Yes.
So let's see what the big mystery was. Why did you find it that you couldn't even start it? So then I'd say to them, okay, if we look at that equation at the top, that k equals the root of x plus 1 all squared minus 4, what does it sort of remind you of? And hopefully some bright spark will tell me, hang on, that looks like a parabola in its turning point form.
Yes.
Or standard form if they want to use the glamorous word. So I'd say, look at that. Y equals a x minus p all squared plus q. The root sign's a bit of a problem, but remember the previous work we did? We took the root sign out and we just popped it in at the end and there was no problem. So let's not let the root
document has it as a plus.
Oh,
but the general principle.
Sorry, I clearly never looked at that.
But just
the standard form is usually a minus, but I think you might be right, and I didn't look.
And I think a lot of textbooks still have it as the minus.
Yeah, that's the normal standard form. But you
yeah.
know what? It doesn't really matter. But whatever it is, you change it appropriate to what your kids know.
Yeah, exactly.
So I do apologize if I didn't read my class document. And then I'd say to them, what is this equation? And they hopefully would tell me it's the equation of a parabola written in a completed square form.
Okay.
And of course, that's something they've had to do in grade 11.
Yes.
So it's not a big surprise for them. They've done this and they know this. What is different? Well, what's different is that blasted square root sign.
Yes.
But let's ignore that. So let's focus on what we know. And I think this is where our children struggle. They struggle to focus on what they know, and they rather get intimidated by what they don't know.
Yes.
So I said, so what? We leave the square root sign out of the picture. We concentrate on what we know. So I said, okay, so let us change the question. Let's take the square root sign way out there. So I've changed it now to look exactly like a parabola.
Yes.
So now they should be feeling more confident. And I said, if I said to you this is a parabola, what is its minimum value? Would you have any problems? And I guarantee you, most of them will say, no, there's no problem, because you've drilled that in class. When you've done the drawing of your parabola, you've told them this is a smiling one and this is a sad one, or whatever techniques you use. And how do we know it? We look at the A value. So there you can see, yes, it's a smiley graph. A is greater than 0. And the turning point is -1, -4. Now even draw it.
Yes.
Just to remind them what it looks like. So the minimum value would happen at the turning point. And the turning point's Y value is -4. So the minimum value is -4.
Yes.
Okay, now let's worry about that square root sign, which is hanging around there and haunting us. But before we do that, actually I said, now let's put the square root back. So what I'm basically saying is that whole equation is greater than -4. So that means the square root, the inside thing has to be greater than -4. Now, this is where the problem solving comes in. They hopefully know that originally it said it was a real number.
Yes.
You can't square root a negative number because it's not real.
Yes.
So what's the first number bigger than -4 that is real?
Yes.
If you're square rooting it, and it's 0. So then they know that, so the minimum value is 0.
Perfect.
So it's not that hard to make this transition. Now, obviously, that looks very intimidating, but this is what you're talking through with them. You're not giving them that.
Yeah.
So you're saying to them, you could actually give it to them if you wanted to, like a prompt on how to handle these kinds of questions. And these kinds of questions do come up more than, you might even find it in a graph.
Yeah.
Or maybe in calculus you could get something like this. Of course, you can use your derivative to get it out there. And even there, it might be a good time to mention the derivative.
Yes.
And say to them, you know what, you can also find a minimum value or maximum value using the derivative equal to 0. Then you check with the second derivative if it's a max or a min. And oh, gosh, look at that. It's the same answer we got doing it this way. So it would be a nice thing to really unpack for them. Because I think once they've seen it, they'll really get it. So then what I would do is I would practice the skill.
Okay.
So if you look here, what is the minimum of A and B? And you notice what I've done. Now, the first one, I've put it in the normal form. I say maximum, sorry. And I say, why maximum? Well, it's a maximum because it's a negative graph. If it's negative, it's facing downwards. So the maximum is the turning point. The biggest Y value is going to be 16. Maximum value 16. Do I need to do a single stitch of work? No, I don't. I can just look and see. B, okay, so it's not written in the normal form. Let's get it in the normal form first. Let's bring that x plus 2 over the other side, and it's b equals minus x plus 2 all squared equals 12. Okay, again, it's a maximum. What is the maximum value? It's 12. Finish client, but they've got it. Then what is the minimum value? Why am I saying minimum? Well, this time it's a smiley graph. So the turning point is going to be the lowest value.
Okay.
And the lowest value here is minus 24 on C. And then D, I need to manipulate it, and I see the minimum value is going to be 8. So
yes.
They've got it now. So then, does the expression below have a minimum or maximum? And what is the minimum or maximum of E? I've put that blasted square root sign back again.
Yes.
So by now, they've got the hang of it. So they're forgetting about the square root sign. They're concentrating on the x plus 2 all squared plus 9. And they're saying, right, that's a positive graph. So it's smiling, which means the turning point's a minimum. So it has a minimum value. That answers the first question. And the minimum value is 9, but I've got to root it because it's the square root of 9.
Yes.
So it'll be 3. And look how easily they can do it now because they've got the idea of it.
Yes.
So that's what I mean by actually putting tools in place for them to interpret. So if they ever get another one like that, there won't be any problem. Hopefully they don't ask the same questions, but they might ask it in a different part of the paper.
Yes. Well, prelims are meant to be there to support.
Correct.
On practice and things like that. So hopefully they are being prepared for papers, future papers.
Yeah, that is what it is for. And so hopefully if they do see it again, it might be in the middle of, as I say, calculus. For that matter. But if you've linked it when you're explaining this, that, oh, hang on, we could have used calculus. But you can point out to them, hang on, if I used calculus, it would be more than 1 mark's worth.
Yes.
So there's got to be an easier way, and the easier way is using our graphs.
Okay.
So that is what I would do, and that sort of gives you a bit of an idea.
So you encourage strategic thinking about your problems.
You know, I think a lot of teachers forget how important it is to verbalize what they are thinking so the children can pick up on it. I think, you know, if they didn't have a teacher, they'd be looking at a textbook that wouldn't verbalize.
Yes.
But the teacher's job is to take that thing and actually express what's going on in their brain.
Yes.
And that's why when I've done the geometry workshops, I've said it's never a bad thing if you get stuck, because the children need to learn to role model of what happens if you're stuck. What do you do as the teacher? Well, this is what I do. So same here. If I'm stuck, what do? I focus on what I know. What I know is that it's a parabola.
Yeah.
And then I worry about all the parts that are making me stick.
Well, hopefully you've started teaching that before this moment in the grade 12.
It's just to demonstrate the principle that I would use. Yeah. But you're right. Hopefully you have done that, but you never know.
There's always the grade 10s of this year that you could start doing these kinds of things with. We are out of time, surprisingly.
Gosh. It is. Went very quickly. Flashed by.
It did. Are there any passing comments you'd like, or parting words for the grade 12 teachers or the grade 12s?
Well, just very good luck with an end of the year exam. It's very important for you guys. I know what it's like. having been in the classroom so many years myself. I think I started teaching in 1980. That just shows you how old I am.
Whew.
We won't even name. I think none of you even thought about it at that stage.
No.
In fact, I laugh because the Star newspaper had an article on the aging teachers. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm one of those. But hopefully I'll teach enough young people what I know, and then it won't be a waste of time.
Yes.
So, yeah, so I just wish them luck, and just to encourage their matrics to fight to get the best possible result for themselves.
Yes. Oh, good.
That's
I think
my
those
advice.
are good parting words.
Yeah.
Remember, you can enter that competition to win a cell phone or a tablet by emailing us at by emailing us at competitions@digitalclassroom.co.za. Thank you, Karen, for all your button pushing.
No problem.
And we'll see you again, not next week, we've got a bit of a break, but in 2 weeks' time, we'll see you. Goodbye.
Created using Powtoon.